Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a part 2 of my red flags in makeup. So I did a part 1 of this a couple weeks ago now, and it was more focused on like the brands and the makeup products themselves. So like the product descriptions or the brands, promotions, and advertisements. And this is going to be more focused on the review side of things. So things that I see as red flags or that give me pause when I'm reading or watching reviews of makeup products. So a few of my friends have done this, like I know Jamila just did this. I know Nikki Raven and Angelic Nyquist did something similar to this recently, so I will link some of those down below in the description box as well, because I do think it's important to see multiple perspectives on this kind of thing. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a definite soft spot for indie makeup and more high-end makeup. And I take a pretty critical, analytical view of my makeup reviews and my makeup collection as a whole, and I have new content every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. Okay, so before I start, I'm going to do my makeup while I talk. I do want to say that there might be some weird construction noise. They were doing a jackhammer sound all morning, but that seems to have gone away. They have fully torn up my entire street. So like right in front of me is fine. There's like, you know, parts closed off and stuff from stuff they did a few weeks ago, but like down there it is like you can't drive down the road anymore. The whole road is torn up. And you have to go around the block in this weird zigzag. Thankfully I don't really drive. But I also don't have a monitor, so hopefully everything looks fine and nothing goes out of focus. I normally use my computer as a monitor, but in these videos where I have like notes to remember, I have them on my computer next to me, so I can't see what I'm doing. I'm just staring at my phone. So for today's makeup, again, I'm not going to talk too much about the makeup I'm actually using, but I did buy some stuff from Pat McGrath. So I bought some stuff from the Lunar New Year collection. I didn't buy it at launch. Didn't feel the need to, but they recently put it all 30% off and there was like a bundle and stuff, so I did jump on that after hemming and hawing for a few days because one of the things that was in the main part of that Lunar New Year collection was a re-release of the quad, the Venus and Fleurs Voyeuristic Fixing Quad. That came out originally with the blushes in like 2021, and I've wanted it since then, but I never bought it, and then it was gone, and I couldn't buy it anywhere. So when they re-released this, I was sad to see that the pans were smaller, although Miriam A on here did get this and did do comparisons between the two, and even though the pans are smaller, she looked at the actual like grams and like information on the box and for both of them, and this actually has more product in it, so they're like smaller but deeper. But this is the quad. It just came this morning, so I'm going to use this to try it out. I'm going to peel that off. I like the red packaging. It's pretty. I just like from an aesthetic, from a visual standpoint, I wish the pans were bigger. Like there's too much empty space around them, but it doesn't really matter, especially getting it 40% or 30% off. I spent $40 on this, and I definitely think it's worth $40. I love Pat's formula. I've wanted this for 2 years now, and I just returned the About Face eye paints that I bought and didn't work for me, so it's kind of a wash price-wise. And then I also got the lipstick that came in that because it's described as a bright brick shade, and I love a brick red. Miriam compared it to Fever Dream, which is my favorite shade from Pat McGrath, and she said that they were really similar, but that's more like peach on me, and seeing this in person, I'm really glad I did buy this because it is not peachy, it is definitely a red, but the packaging is so pretty. I really love the red touch, the gold, and then the bullet itself has this really beautiful detail around it. I can't wait to use this, but that'll be in a different video or different photos. I don't really want to wear a red lip today, especially with like sparkly makeup. I tend to prefer like a matte smoky eye with a red lip. And then another disclaimer, this is not like an all-encompassing list. I've watched a few other videos like this and I had my own thoughts, but I would definitely recommend checking out other people's. If I forgot something that you think is a red flag, definitely let me know in the comments, because I'd like, you know, there's probably things that I'm forgetting. Also, I don't see these as like the worst thing in the world. Like some of these things, they make me pause and second guess, or, you know, something like that. But it's not like, oh, someone did this, I can never trust them, or I'm never gonna watch their videos, or they're a bad person. So like, we're not gonna make a moral judgment about the person when it comes to most of these things. I don't have any makeup on. I'm just gonna start going in with my eyes first, because this shade I really wanna try out, the Rose Fire Nectar, but it does feel kind of flaky and textured, so I don't want to have fallout. So I'm gonna do my eyes first. All I have on is a little bit of brow gel and a little bit of Mycosis lip mask. This is the Plump and Juicy Collagen Lip Boost. Really like this, it's almost dead. So I'm gonna just go in and start talking. Also, hopefully the lighting's fine. When I looked at myself using this as a monitor before I switched over to my notes, I looked a little golden, but that's fine. But yeah, it's a nice day. The sun is actually out. It's feeling like spring again, which I was texting people earlier. It was like, as soon as this weather turns into this like early spring temp, I just immediately, like, there's like a deep desire to play Pokemon. Like, I will probably take a bath later tonight and play some Pokemon in it, because I just have that, like, it's just a very, like, since I was like 10, when the first ones came out, like, this is the time of year where I'm like, I really need to play. Okay, so the first red flag is a big one. And the first thing I wrote was undisclosed sponsorships. So obviously you don't always know. If it's undisclosed, you don't know if it's an undisclosed sponsorship or not, but you can often tell. I mean, there was the whole Michaela mascara thing recently where it had like, on TikTok, it had like, whatever, was it Maybelline? I don't remember what brand it was, but it said like Maybelline partner in tiny letter at the beginning. So it was like disclosed but not disclosed. And that's kind of shady and unethical. But there are definitely videos where it seems sponsored and they're not saying it. Like, they're using talking points directly from the brand, especially when they like post something like they got it in PR and so it hasn't been launched yet, but they don't say that they got it in PR and they're not talking about it being sponsored anyway, but like it feels like a sales pitch. That's always like a red flag or a pause for me, is when it doesn't feel like a review, it feels like a sales pitch. Because that might be an undisclosed sponsorship, or they're just a very salesy person, which in general is not my vibe. I watch makeup reviews to see, generally only for products that I'm interested in, or if it's like a friend and I like watching their videos and I'm supporting them. But I'm watching because I want to know how the product performs, or I want to see it on someone with a similar skin tone to me, or something like that, because I'm interested in it. So I don't need them to just sell me on it. I need them to give details, talk about the texture, talk about how it wears, talk about the formula, all of that stuff. I'm looking at it of someone analyzing the performance of it, which is part of why I started YouTube, because I didn't see enough of that I wanted, not enough analytical content. I don't like salesy videos, I don't like salesy videos. I don't like salesy things in general. So that's always kind of a red flag for me. Like, when I'm reviewing something I got in PR from like Nomad or something, I still talk about like, so here's what they say, here are my initial thoughts, or here's my thoughts after using it for a couple weeks. I think this is worth it or not. But I'm not like, you need to buy this, or I try not to make it feel very salesy, because I'm not a salesperson in general. I can sell something that I really care about and I think is worth the money and be like, yes, if you are in the market for this, I think this is great. But to sell something just to sell something is not my vibe at all. So if it seems like a sales pitch or a sponsorship, that's just an immediate red flag, like pause. And if all I see are kind of sponsory sales, I mean, I don't mind a sponsored video as long as you disclose it. And you're saying it's sponsored, but I'm being honest. And you seem like you're being honest. But if someone does too many videos, like all they do are very like salesy, schmoozy kind of video, I'm just not going to subscribe. I'm not going to watch their content. Because that content in general is a red flag for me. It doesn't feel authentic. So I can make that a second point to this that I don't have written down here, is inauthentic reviews. I have something that might be similar down the list, but I think inauthenticity is a big turnoff for me. I think people should be their authentic selves at all times. I try to be authentically myself at all times, and be visibly and vocally myself. But there's something like you can tell when someone's being inauthentic and like not themselves, and it's a huge turn off and red flag. And if I see it too much, if I see it once, it makes me think, what's wrong with this video? Like, why are you doing this? Are you just trying to sell a product? But if I see it all the time, I don't know if I can believe them or trust what they say, because they don't feel like a genuine person. So that is another red flag. And it's like the language they use, the verbiage they use. There's little subtleties that just make a person feel inauthentic that I just don't like. I've gone through too many traumatic events and too many things in my life to deal with like fake people. So I just, in my life and in like reviews and in my like content that I consume, fakeness and inauthenticity is just like a huge turnoff and a huge red flag. So this color is really pretty. I don't really wear reds, but this is kind of a rosy tone and it is really pretty. I would definitely wear this. I mean, that's why I bought the quad. I like this kind of tone, and the shade's performing nicely. Okay, and I'm starting to hear some noise from the construction site, so hopefully it's not too distracting in the background. I won't know if you can hear it until I go to edit the video. So I could go in with the other metallic shade first, but I think I'm just gonna go straight in with Rosefire Nectar and see how it works. But I am gonna use some glitter glue because it does feel really textured. And I just washed my brushes, so my glitter glue brush is nice and clean. Okay, so I hear a leaf blower and what sounds like a saw. So we'll see how this works, or see how the noise gets. The second red flag that I see in a lot of reviews is the phrase "run, don't walk." I hate that. I understand hype, I understand all of that, especially if there's like something that people have been waiting for a sale from a brand that doesn't really do them, and you're like, okay, they're finally having a sale. But just the phrase "run, don't walk" is just, it feels so salesy, and it feels pressure. I don't like language that adds pressure to the consumer. I just don't think consumers need pressure to buy more. I'm gonna try a finger and a brush with this, by the way. So just the phrase "run, don't walk" is just an immediate like, ooh, I don't like this. And I do follow some people that sometimes say it, and I don't blame them for saying it, but it is something that like I don't enjoy seeing, and I definitely feel iffy about when I do see it. It again feels like pressure, like you're trying to pressure the consumer into buying something. Especially if it's like this new release, run, don't like, go get it now. Like, I just don't like that vibe at all, for anything. And that kind of goes along with the phrase "you need this." So that there's some context to. So if you said, if you're looking for X, Y, and Z, that you might, no, even still then, like you might be able to say, I was going to say, if you were looking for X, Y, and Z, then you need this. But even still, there's almost always another option, and I don't feel like you should be telling people they need something. There's very few things we need, especially when it comes to makeup or skincare. Everybody has different skin needs, everybody has different skin types and concern, and I feel like saying you need this is just like, again, trying to push people to consume more and consume more and consume more. And I have a lot of makeup, and I have especially a lot of eyeshadow, but I've never said you need this, and I've never liked people that say that, because it's like, I want this because it's pretty and I don't have something similar, or maybe I have something similar, but I still want it because it's pretty and I like it. That's fine, but you don't need any, like, especially when it's like, this new eyeshadow palette is out, you need this, go get it. I hate that. I really do not like that. And when I see that off over and over and over again, I'm just, especially if it's someone I follow, I'm just not going to follow them. Like, I'm just not going to engage with that kind of content, because it's too salesy. I just don't like the vibe of that at all. This shadow is really pretty. I'm really glad I don't have any fallout. I have like a little bit of sparkle under my eye right here, but it's not, that's from where my finger pressed. It's very sparkly. I don't know how it looks on camera, but it is really pretty. I thought it might be similar to, there's the shade from Sashimi City from Kaleidos, and I did swatch them earlier next to each other, and they're a similar flip of that, like pink to gold or gold to pink. On my hand, this was very gold heavy. On my eye, it's looking a little more pink. But this is so much more intense, so much more pigmented, so much brighter, so much, like, that's like the everyday wash of color, like sparkle compared to this. So I'm glad they're not identical, because I'm happy to have both. So the next thing that I've written down is a lack of critical thought / liking everything. So obviously you can there are times where I do favorites and fails, and I like everything because I was very careful and I bought only things that I wanted, and I ended up liking them, and I was lucky. But I still try to add some critical thought of here's why I like it, here's this. But I see a lot of people, I see it on TikTok and I've seen it on here, where they're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, look at this. Oh my gosh, oh my God. And they just they never pause to be and they just say, wow, look how pretty this is, or wow, look at this. But they never say what they're liking about it. There's no critical thinking, there's no thought process. It's just all that influencer reaction, wow, oh my God, and there's nothing beyond that. And I don't like creators that do that. I am a scientist, I am an academic. I have spent the last 10 plus years in academia, so I'm prone to not like that. I'm prone to critical think, but I also that's always been me, even as an autistic kid before I knew I had autism. That is just, critically thinking about things and asking why is something that I've always done. So when people show an inability to critically think, it's a red flag, but it's also just we're not compatible as humans. We might be able to be acquaintances, but we're never going to be friends, because we just view the world and interact with the world very differently. And that's fine. We should all interact with the world differently. But I don't know. There's just something where it's we're not compatible, in the way we view things. And that's important to know about yourself. I'm just kind of blending out the edges. I'm just making this more dramatic than it was. And I don't know why, just because I'm sitting here. Okay, so the next thing on my list is lying. So obviously, people lie all the time and we don't know who's lying about what. But there are some things that you can kind of tell someone's lying about. And they make me distrust the person. So like the most common example that I see is someone getting something in PR, and I don't know if they're just doing this because they got it in PR and they don't want to be kicked off the PR list, or because they feel like they have to, or maybe it's an undisclosed sponsorship and they're trying not to you know, they're just doing that. But when they blatantly lie when they're like, wow, look how pigmented this eyeshadow is, and it's not. Or like, look at how beautifully this is blending, and like you can obviously see that it's patchy and looks awful, and it's like skipping and not working properly. Or I've even seen people do the opposite, where they're like, they put it on and it's blending really nicely, and you're like, wow, that looks really nice. And they're like, wow, this looks awful. And it might look different in person, obviously, but like, when they're like, this looks awful, I can't believe how bad this is. And it feels like sometimes that happens when it's like a higher end product, and it feels like they're hating on it to justify it, to be like, this isn't worth the money, like everybody else likes this, and this is stupid and bad. And it again goes back to being disingenuous and fake, and like they're like, but like, especially when I see people talk about like, oh wow, look how beautiful this is blending, and I'm like, you didn't blend it, it's patchy, there's spots missing, you can see where it skipped, it's different in two different spots, like it looks awful, like your eye looks bad and you're talking about how great it looks. And like sometimes that's a skill thing, and it could be the person's not the best at blending, but when you see them, like, it's not every video, like sometimes, you know, they can blend better. I've seen them blend better, and you can see that they're struggling with it, and they're still like talking about how nice it is. It's like, okay, I can see you're struggling. Like, we can all see that you're struggling and this isn't going very well. Please stop lying and pretending that it's the best eyeshadow palette you've ever used, when we can clearly see that you are struggling a lot. And that is a big red flag for me. Immediately makes me second guess the person and like wonder what the alternative motives are. So I will say part of that comes from being an academic. So one of the things that you're trained to do, and I was trained to do, is when you read a paper, you have to read it critically. You have to look at who their funding source was, look at what they're citing. They're making some big claim and they're backing up with citation, but then you look at the citation and it's one of their own papers about a fully different topic. You're like, okay, and you can see that it was funded by this, and then you look up the person and they're like a high-ranking member of that journal or that society, so they obviously got priority publication for it, or maybe it didn't even go through peer review like normal. So like, you have to look at all of that to know how much to trust the science. And so I do that with everything. I mean, I did that kind of before, but especially after multiple graduate degrees, it's just kind of ingrained in me to always do that. So seeing people like lie and pretend to like something that's, I mean, they can still like it, that's fine. But if they're pretending it's the best thing ever and that it's working effortlessly when it's obviously not, that is a definite red flag for me. And that's basically the next point I have, that I have like lying, and then I have saying it's good when you can see it's not. So it's definitely something I watch for, because it matters a lot for knowing if the product is actually good. and if you can trust them, or what, you know, what's going on behind the scenes, that they're pretending like something is the greatest thing in the world when you can clearly see they're struggling. Okay, and then going kind of along with that, I have saying it's good when you can see it's not, and then I have saying they didn't want to buy it, but they bought it anyway, or they didn't like it. So this is something that I've talked about on the channel before, but when someone says, I didn't want this product, but I bought it anyway, it's an immediate red flag for the video. So they could end up loving it, and that's fine, but I feel like generally people say, I didn't want to buy this, but I bought it anyway because, you know, it's a brand that I generally like, or other people are buying it or whatever. And then they generally don't like the product. So it just makes me wonder, like, do you know your own preferences, or like, why are you wasting your money buying something you didn't want and then you don't like? This was in my unpopular opinions video, something similar to this. But like, if you didn't want the product and it's not colors you like, then don't buy it. Like, you may love Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath or like whatever, but if you hate blue eyeshadow and you never wear blue eyeshadow ever, it's your least favorite color, you will never wear it, and then like Pat McGrath came out with a blue eyeshadow palette, like fully blue, and then you bought it and then you complained about it, like, why buy it? You're just wasting $100 or $60 or whatever on something that you didn't want in the first place. Someone who does want it could get it. And I do know there are some big channels that will be like, I'm not really interested in this, but this is what I do for a living, so let me review it and try to give you an unbiased opinion about like how it performs. Even if it's not my colors, I can tell you if it performs well. But generally, you can see the way that it's something they don't like and they won't wear, kind of influence their opinion and how they use it, and then you're not going to get a really good review. I mean, I don't think a first impression is a review. That's the next point on my list. So if all you're going to do is a first impression and maybe some swatches, that's fine. There's lots of people doing that. A real review takes multiple uses to know how something lasts on the eyes, how it performs, how the shades work together. There's a lot to like actually review something. Takes some effort, and you need to use something more than once. So if something that you hate and you're not going to like, you're not going to use it enough to give an accurate review. You're only going to be able to do a first impression, and that's not good enough. The next thing I have on my list is first impressions, calling first impressions a review, and only doing first impressions. So even when I might have done this a little bit when I first started, but like, I have always tried to be like, this is a first impression. Like, I will keep using this off camera. I will keep using this on camera. This is my initial thoughts, my final thoughts from today, but it's not like a full-fledged review. And I will put like review in the title if it's something that I've used over and over again and can review. And I will say first impression if it's a first impression. So if someone only does first impressions and they think that that is a review, that is a red flag. It could be something they don't know any better. They could be new and small and they're just copying what other people have done and they've done that. But it could also just be, that's all they, like, it's just, a first impression is not like, you're never going to know, you're not going to be able to try everything at once. You're not going to have multiple wear tests. You're not going to have tests on different days when your skin is doing differently because our skin is different every day. Like, there's so many other variables that you're not taking into an account when you're doing a first impression, or that you can't, that when I only see first impressions, it's a red flag for me, because I want a real review. I am an analytical person and I want analysis. I want to know more than just like, this is pretty and here's some swatches. Okay, so the next thing is if a reviewer doesn't understand the difference between personal preference and quality. So I see this a lot. People don't understand that they'll say something is bad when it's different from their personal taste and preference. So the blue eyeshadow is one example, but something like it's a matte foundation and the person has really dry skin and only wears dewy foundations, or the opposite. It is a dewy foundation for someone that only likes matte foundations. That is about your personal preference, and it's going to change your opinion of the product. And it's not the same as talking about the quality of the product. Talking about the quality is separate. It's the same. I see this a lot with eyeshadows, or eyeshadow palette reviews, where someone really likes sparkly indie multi-chrome shades, and a palette will have normal metallics or satins or something, and they'll say it's a bad palette because it has satins. That's not the same thing. That is a difference in your preference and a difference in style. But that doesn't speak to the quality of the shadow, because there are people who like satins and don't like multichromes and sparkly indie shades and like texture and like that. So that's about knowing your personal preference and not putting that on the quality of the product, because those satins could be really high quality satins. And a person who likes satins could really love those and think that they're great. But so you have to distance yourself and what your you have to say, here are my personal preferences and my tastes. Obviously, you're a reviewer, and those are implicitly built into how you review something. But equating quality with your personal taste is a big red flag. I think the best way to handle it would be what I've seen people do, which is, this is not they'll like try the shadow and they'll say like, oh, this is more sparkly than I normally like to wear, or, oh, this is a really satin-like shadow. I don't really like to wear those, but I do know people do like to wear them. So, if that is you, you might like this. Like, there's context that needs to be added and self-awareness that needs to be included. And I think it's a lack of self-awareness a lot of the time that really bothers me. Not just in reviews, but in general. Very unaware, people who are very unaware of themselves and have no self-reflection or awareness are definitely red flags as people to me too. So another personal red flag for me is people not reading about the product or knowing anything about the product before buying it and reviewing it. So I see this a lot where, like, someone, let's say it's another eyeshadow palette or something, and their shade descriptions published by, the brand. Obviously, if you're getting it in PR, you don't know ahead of time. I know as someone who gets PR from some brands, it's not on the website. There's not published material about it. So I don't know details about the shade is supposed to be this kind of texture and the shade is supposed to be this kind of texture. But when that stuff is available and you've just bought it yourself and you're not looking at any of that product information, especially people who seem to pride themselves on knowing a lot about the products and then don't seem to, is always weird. It's like, okay, like, let's say the palette has 2 topper shades in it, and the person generally doesn't like toppers. That's another personal preference thing. But let's say they don't mind a topper, but like, they didn't know the shadow's supposed to be topper. They haven't swatched it. They didn't read a shade description. They didn't look at anything. And then they go to put a topper shade on their eye, and they're expecting it to be fully opaque and like a high foiled metallic. And they're like, oh, this is a topper. I wanted this shade to be a high foiled metallic. And it's like, well, maybe you should have looked at the shade descriptions beforehand, or touched it, or like when you did touch it, you could have you can tell that it's not a high foiled metallic. You can tell it's a topper. So like that, like being unaware of the product that they're using before they use it often means that they use it incorrectly and don't like it because they used it incorrectly, which is the next problem I have. Like using a product incorrectly, not as it's advertised, and then being mad that it's not doing that. So I see this all the time where I'm trying to think of a specific example, but like the product says it does X and Y, but you want it to do Z, but it doesn't claim to do Z at all. It doesn't claim to do that other thing. It only claims to do X and Y. And then you use it expecting it to do Z, whatever that is, and it doesn't do it, and then you're mad at it and you say it's a trash product. When it never claimed to do that. It only claimed to do the other two things. So that kind of ties in with the background info thing, but like, it just, when I see that in reviews, it makes me like question your methods. And also like, what did you expect? Like, you can't buy a matte foundation and expect it to give you a dewy finish. I mean, it might be able to if you mix in dewy products and you use a dewy primer and you do all of this stuff, but it's going against what they actually sold it for. And so buying like an ultra matte 24-hour wear foundation and then wanting it to be a dewy skin tint and then it's not that and you're mad at it, like that's a you problem. That means that you don't know how to review a product. To me, that says that you don't know how to review a product and you don't know how to analyze a product or understand what a product is. And that makes me not trust you as a reviewer when I see that, especially when I see it over and over again. I don't trust you to be able to actually understand a product and use it if you do that a lot. And that might sound harsh, but this is, my opinion. This is my channel. So, but that's how I feel. I see it sometimes repeatedly where I'm just like, wow, you have no idea what you're doing and you're not bothering to learn. So I don't trust you. And that's a big red flag for me. I think there's a leaf blower again. I'm gonna go off camera while there's a leaf blower and put on some mascara and a lip, and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm back. I went ahead and added my Pat McGrath mascara and my Haus Labs lip oil, and then I sprayed a little bit of my Urban Decay setting spray over my face just to melt everything together. Really like the way this looks. The shadow is really interesting. It's smooth and looks really smooth and metallic, but also has a lot of sparkle, and I really like it. I think this would look really pretty in like a low light situation, like a bar or a club. So excited to wear this more. I'm really happy I finally grabbed this palette. I think the only thing I haven't done that I want to do is throw a little bit of the highlight shade, because Pat always includes a little highlight, and I'm gonna put that on my inner corner. So I already put it on like the inner part of my lid, but I'm gonna put a little bit right here. Okay. So those are my red flags for makeup reviews. I would say like the last one is a lack of detail, but I think that kind of like was said in a lot of the other things I said, but a lack of detail in your review is a red flag to me. Because it says like you haven't thought about the product very well, or you don't know very much about it, and you're not being very informative, which is what a review should be. So a lack of detail is always a red flag, both in writing and TikTok and YouTube and whatever. So those are my red flags. Let me know what you think. So let me know in the comments what you think, what your red flags are. I'd love to hear it. I had a lot of really great responses to the last one, so I'd love to see the discussion in the comments below. Always be respectful though, remember that. Thank you so much for watching. I am going to try and film at least one more video while I have makeup on and some time today, because my partner is not at home, so I have the apartment to myself to actually film. So I'm gonna go do that, and I will see you all in my next video.